After nearly 2 decades of the longest-running US war, the United States and Afghan Taliban have signed a historic agreement. With the potential to end the war in Afghanistan, the long-awaited agreement includes a timeline of 14 months for all US and NATO troops to withdraw. A Taliban guarantee that Afghan soil will not be used to threaten US security, and negotiations with the Afghan government by March 10, leading to a permanent and comprehensive ceasefire. Behind the signing was years of shuttle diplomacy. Qatar played a central role in the negotiations. It hosted the months-long discussion between representatives of the Taliban and American officials in the capital, Doha. Now, with an agreement in place to stop the fighting and impending withdrawal of foreign troops, can Afghans negotiate a deal among themselves? Can peace finally come to Afghanistan? Qatar's Special Envoy for Counter-Terrorism and Mediation of Conflict Resolution, bin Majid al-Qahtani, talks to Al Jazeera. The agreement that's been signed in Doha is being hailed as a milestone and a stepping stone for peace in Afghanistan. How has Qatar been involved in this whole process?
Well, we have been involved in this process for a relatively good period of time. We have been requested, asked by the parties to mediate and to facilitate peace talks between them. Quite frankly, it was very difficult. It was extremely difficult, but nevertheless, we got involved and we did our utmost. We appreciate the trust of the parties to Qatar. And we have been working at least on this for a few years. Ultimately, we managed to conclude it.
You have been talking to the Taliban, you have been talking to the US government. Individually, you've been talking to the Afghan government as well. And a few months ago, you were in Kabul talking to the President Ashraf Ghani's government. Share with us, how difficult was it and how were you able to achieve what Qatar has achieved by bringing all sides to the table?
Well, there is a lot of cultural sensitivities to the talks because there's different of culture, there's different of perception, different belief, different characters, and different way of thinking. And there is a lot of unwritten rules in negotiation or mediation, especially when you deal with two distinct and two not easy parties to the conflicts. So we were quite flexible in terms of adapting ourselves with the parties. Again, it was extremely difficult, but ultimately we managed to solve this, we think, from day one. And we told the parties that there is no military solution to this. The only option and the best option for all of you is to sit and to negotiate a peace deal. And quite frankly, we felt that the parties want to negotiate a deal and want to put an end to this war.
I saw the opening of the office in 2013. I saw how it all fell apart when the Taliban insisted in calling Afghanistan Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. They still do not want to sit with the government face to face. There are hurdles along the way because this is just one step in the direction of peace. So will Qatar be involved in the process in the long run? Are you going to be hosting the intra-Afghan dialogue? And how is Qatar's involvement going to take shape now?
You should not forget that this is Afghan-owned and Afghan-led process. This is not, we don't own it. Nobody owns this. This is the Afghan themselves who own this. But they cannot do it in Afghanistan, so that's why we are helping. It's up to them. If they want to continue in Doha, we're more than happy to do so. If they want to go somewhere else, we will be supportive of that. If they want us to join in a third country to be co-facilitator or co-mediators, we'll be more than happy to do this. The most important is that they talk to each other and they put an end to their differences, because this is the only way to bring peace to Afghanistan.
But those differences remain because, as you mentioned, that this has been a tough road for all of the sides who've tried to move them closer together as a difficult phase. How are you going to make sure that they are talking to each other? What is going to be your role now that you've opened the door for them, you've invited them to the table? How are you going to make sure that they stay on the table?
Well, I want just to recall what we did last year. And last July, we managed to have inter-Afghan dialogue, not negotiation, but dialogue, when all Afghans from Kabul, from Afghanistan, from Afghan outside Afghanistan, and with Taliban sitting next to each other, shoulder to shoulder, talking about their country and the future of Afghanistan. So I think this is maybe a tactic, but I'm 100% sure that they will talk ultimately. We will, again, it's not about facing each other. This is not the direct talk. It's not necessarily to be like facing each other and talking directly to each other, and you call this inter-Afghan negotiation. Maybe shuttle diplomacy could help, at least in the meantime, to facilitate talks, even with relatively a distance between the two sides. Again, you need to be creative, you need to be innovative, and you should be patient. And we would like the parties to be patient and to work together. And we are more than happy to help and to assist.
So diplomacy aside, Afghanistan is in a situation where it's struggling to meet its budget, pay for its military, and it relies heavily on foreign assistance, especially from Western states who've been invested in Afghanistan for the last 20 years. Is there a role for Qatar in that process? Are you part, or are you going to be part of the future phase of Afghanistan, where the United States has pledged that its support, training, assistance is going to continue for Afghan security forces, and it wants the democratic setup to stay in place?
You know, I've been visiting Afghanistan for some times, and we are speaking with our partners, because we need to help Afghanistan. It's not about only peace talks. It's about development. It's about economic empowerment. It's about education. It's about healthcare, and we have a good record of all of this. So we are more than happy to help the Afghans and the healthcare sector and education sector, and we have a certain initiative and certain programs in Qatar who could help Afghan kids, young men and women in Afghanistan, to empower them to have a better future. So we are open to this, and we have been doing this in different parts of the world. So Afghanistan is so close to us, to our heart, and we have been very close to these issues, and we would like to help our Afghan friends and brothers.
So you are the special envoy for conflict resolution, and as you've seen in the last few years that you've been associated with the Afghan conflict, that it is not just Afghans themselves. There are a lot of external actors which are involved in there as well, including neighboring states, India, Pakistan, other Central Asian states as well. How are you, or are you going to be talking to all of those actors as well? Because as you said, that this is a special moment for Qatar that it has achieved. So are you going to be expanding that role?
Right. I think in the past there was too much involvement in Afghanistan's business, and a lot of external and proxy, and quite competition, I would say, sometimes over Afghanistan. And our advice from day one to our American partners, to our strategic partners, to those like-minded countries, we need to streamline and consolidate our efforts. Fragmentations and the proliferations of efforts here and there will not help. So those countries and our partners, especially the United States, came to the conclusion that we need to consolidate and streamline our efforts, and to focus in Doha as the most genuine platform to bring peace to Afghanistan, and we succeeded together.
Run us through this process, because the last 18 months have been hectic, to say the least, where there's been a lot of diplomacy happening on all fronts. Run us through that process, because in that 18 months, we also saw efforts by neighboring countries to take this process away from Qatar as well, and they, to a point, almost succeeded. What happened?
You know, I would rather not to go into more details because I think if you check the record speaks for itself. But I would recall that the negotiation started in November 2018. And we agreed a month later, next month, which is December 2018, to resume the talks. We were surprised that the meeting did not take place in Doha, but nevertheless, it took place in one of the neighboring countries with the participation of more countries. And we received a request to facilitate the travel of Taliban from Doha to the neighboring countries, and we did. Why? Because we do not own this. This is Afghan-owned, Afghan-led process. If they want to go and to have this talk somewhere else, we're more than happy to support that cause. So the meeting was not successful, and it failed, basically. Those who were in that meeting came to the conclusion that we need to go back to Doha and to resume the talks in Doha, because, as I said, Doha has no hidden agenda. We have been doing this for a long time. We're not competing with any countries. And if those who are parties to the conflicts, they want to go somewhere else, let it be. No, we have no problem whatsoever. Then we started in January, 21st of January 2018. We started with drafting. We started with only 4 lines. And then till September, and September, there was an issue which the process was put on hold, to be frank, by the President of the United States. So then we start thinking about how to overcome this, we start working on face saving, how to bring the parties back to the negotiating table. So we thought about 2 options or 2 ideas. One is to work on the hostages release, and then to work on the reduction of violence. So we started in November the exchange of hostages, or the swap. We released 2 Western professors were held hostage with Taliban, and also 3 Taliban individuals which were held also as prisoners with Kabul. And also we managed to release 10 Afghan security forces soldiers with Taliban. And by doing that, we started to build some kind of confidence between the parties. Then we moved to the next idea, which is to reduce violence. And successfully, for the first time in the last 20 years, the reduction of violence went almost to 0. When we used to hear that at least in Afghanistan, you lose around 200 individuals every single day, and in the list, and during 7 days, almost 10 or so. So that tells us 2 things. The parties can do this, and second, we see that collectively we can work together, and collectively we saved a lot of lives. And that paved the way for a successful conclusion of the agreement.
I will come to the hostage negotiations later, but I want to take you back to that night in September where there was a tweet by the US president and everything came to a grinding halt. I spoke to somebody who saw you that night and told me that they were surprised, as you were, about the decision which came randomly to many people. How were you able to salvage the situation afterwards, and what happened in the hours after that tweet?
Well, I know the tweet we were quite surprised, to be honest with you. But we are trained to adapt and to be not to panic, and just to try to overcome this challenge. For the US, there are reasons for doing so, but we think this is still an ongoing conflict. And we haven't signed the deal, and we should sign the deal and then judge the parties to the deal, whether they violate it or not. So, but what happened, we managed to contain this ultimately, is through this confidence-building measures, the swap, and also the REF, for reduction of violence, which resulted, as I said, a very successful conclusion of a peace agreement between Taliban and the US.
Your critics in the region say that with that hostage swap, it showed that Qatar has sway over fighting groups. It amplifies what they say as Qatar's influence amongst fighting groups and allegations of terrorism on Qatar. How would you respond to them?
Those countries who accuse Qatar have been trying to host these talks. And they try to persuade certain parties to the conflicts to bring these talks in their respective countries. But for us, we never done so. And we believe in ourselves, we believe in our cause of action, we believe in our record of being a genuine peace broker. But again, I was surprised when I'm surprised to hear something like this. But we felt for Taliban to move forward with this, they have to give these hostages, and also for the other side to move forward to give some in return. Again, this is not about counterterrorism. This is not about, it's about the peace talks. Yesterday, they considered Taliban as a terrorist organization, while today, a major or superpower signing a deal with Taliban, which they used to accuse as terrorist organization. So that speaks for itself.
Let's talk about the wider region. You are the Special Envoy for Counterterrorism and Conflict Resolution. What is Qatar's role in the region now when it comes to conflicts in Syria, when it comes to conflicts in Libya, when it comes to the conflict in Yemen? Where does Qatar stand in each of these conflicts? And does Qatar have an active role in trying to resolve other conflicts besides Afghanistan?
Well, again, as I said at the beginning, you cannot involve in any given conflict or mediating a conflict without being asked by the relevant parties. This is one. Second, mediation, good officers trying to solve or use preventive diplomacy is one of our major or main pillars of our foreign policy. So we do believe in solving our differences by peaceful means. So we do encourage countries to solve their differences by peaceful means. We're trying to utilize our good officers as much as we can. But conflicts, as we said, from our experience in Afghanistan, there is no military solution to any of these conflicts. But unfortunately, most of these conflicts in the region has mostly external elements. And I think we should call on those countries to stop intervening in the business of other countries.
Qatar has now achieved what it wanted, or part of what it wanted in Afghanistan. There has been involvement in trying to resolve the conflicts like the one in Somalia, for instance. Qatar has been hosting many of the fighting sides. There has been also developments on the Sudanese front. Looking from outside at a country with not a lot of influence, but getting involved in trying to resolve all these conflicts, why does Qatar want that, and what does Qatar achieve out of it?
Well, as I said, we gained a good credibility as a credible peace broker. People would like to seek Qatar help because Qatar has no hidden agenda. Qatar, we have no interest in other countries in terms of expanding or otherwise. As I said, Qatar has a good record of mediation, and Qatar has no hidden agenda, and we would like to help, and we continue to help, and we will help those countries who are in need. So that's basically what it is.
But what does Qatar get out of it?
Well, what does Qatar get is something, it's not about recognition, but Qatar do believe in this, and this is because we do something that we believe in. So we do believe in mediation, we do believe in preventive diplomacy, and I think this is what other countries should do, as opposed to violating this territorial integrity or sovereignty of other countries.
How would you respond to the countries, your neighbors who've put Qatar under the blockade? They accuse Qatar of harboring terrorism, where Qatar says that, look at our record, we are actually resolving conflicts. And all of those people who were against Qatar in the very beginning have all turned sides. So how would you respond to them? And is there any credence to the fact that Qatar has been involved, according to them, in terrorist activities?
Well, if you want to speak about the record speaks for itself. If you start from 9/11, which instigated all this war in Afghanistan, if you speak about 9/11, if you see also the hijackers, if you see 15 Saudis hijackers with 2 Emirati hijackers led by Egyptian pilot, who's remaining now from those blockading countries? Bahrain. We know that the Grand Mufti of Daesh is from Bahrain. Shall we continue this? I think this is not the right discussions. So terrorism, there is no country is immune from terrorism, and I think we should put our differences on the side. This is not the right subject to engage in political maneuvering or political campaigning against each other and taking terrorism as a kind of a pretext to violate international law through the blockade or trying to advance certain political agenda in the region. Qatar is a sovereign nation. Qatar is resilient. Our economy is strong. Our nation is united. We rallied behind our emir, and we'll continue to do the best for ourselves, for our nation, and for the international community as a whole.
Finally, let's bring you back to Afghanistan. Now that this agreement has been signed, how hopeful are you that the process, this is phase 1, now there's going to be intra-Afghan dialogue, then obviously a complete pullout in just a matter of months of foreign troops. Is there going to be another force which is going to help Afghanistan? How does Qatar see the future of Afghanistan taking shape? Obviously, you said that it's going to be Afghan-led, but you must have a vague idea in mind of what you want to see in Afghanistan.
Yes, we want the Afghans themselves to talk to each other, to solve their differences, to speak about their future and the future government and the future nation. This is what it says in the agreement. It's one of the major components of the agreement is the result of the inter-Afghan negotiations, or the inter-Afghan negotiations is about the future of Afghanistan. It is up to the new government to decide whether to have a certain partnership or agreement, military or otherwise, with all countries around the globe. So that we do not decide this the Afghans themselves decide their future.
The only outside country that was mentioned in that document was Pakistan. Are you talking to those sides? You said that there are like-minded states. Is Pakistan one of them? Are you talking to them? What is going to be their role? Because they've had a role in the past, since the 80s in Afghanistan, in the future of this peace process.
You know, we assume that any neighboring country to a conflict zone has an interest to bring peace or a kind of stability to the neighboring country. This is the common sense. So we think that Pakistan has an interest, and we tell Pakistanis, and the Pakistanis I think do believe in this, that having a stable Afghanistan is in their interest. I don't think less stable Afghanistan is in the interest of Pakistan. So as a neighboring country, we have been talking to them, and Pakistan, we have a strong relationship with Pakistan, and we want to continue this strong partnership with them. Afghanistan is one of the issues that we are discussing with the Pakistanis, and I think the Pakistanis can help and can put this process in the right direction.
You've been talking to me about sleepless nights in the months leading up to this signing. Tell us, what will be the ultimate goal that you would be able to achieve, and look at your tenure as somebody who was involved in this process. What is the ultimate goal that you want to see Afghanistan achieve, and that you will say that you're proud of that?
I want Taliban and other non-Taliban Afghan living next to each other, side by side, in peace, stability, security, and inshallah more prosperity.
Your Excellency Dr. Muttaq al-Qahtani, Qatar's Special Envoy on Counter-Terrorism and Conflict Resolution, thank you very much for talking to Al Jazeera.
Thank you, it's my pleasure. Thank you.